We humans, which includes you and I, all have a different way of dealing and processing the miracle of death. You see, when we, you and I, and the ones after us, and many of the ones before us, were born, we quite know what to expect. Of course, we all go on our diversion paths and find our own way out in this big world. Some seem to be charmed. The measures of success vary significantly. The ways of existing are as many as the proverbial cliched grains of sand on all the beaches of yore. But when it comes to death, we just don't know how it all shakes down, do we? And there's no way of knowing. And then the way that we respect and deal and celebrate, commemorate, commiserate with death also changes and evolves with centuries and cultures. Now, I don't mean to seem macabre, but this has been on my mind on the account of a dear auntie, which I'm saying instead of auntie, passed away this last week. So, of course, anytime something like that happens, we think, how do we communicate? How do we commemorate? How do we commiserate? And then things like time zones and geography and timing, all the logistics, all get in the way of the emotions. And for any of you, which I suspect is most of you, who have dealt with the passing of a dear one, the grieving and the processing kind of almost gets pushed to the back because of the logistics, especially when you live wander and fro. I know yonder and fro. I know that this was the case with the passing of both my parents, very different circumstances. But in this case, my dear auntie. So, since now the commemorations and the memorials and the service and the obituaries have been written, I will call her by her name, which we call her Mickey. She was Mildred on her birth certificate, and I suppose on the certificates that follow, but never once did I hear anyone call her Mildred. Oh, as come the machines coming in the background, here I am in this bucolic scene up in the Hiruzen plateau to commemorate dear Aunt Mickey. So this last weekend, today is a Monday here in Japan, this last weekend was the various rituals, the viewings, the ceremonies, the services in which all my dear cousins spoke with their memories of their mother, and Uncle Bob, not to be confused with all the other Roberts and Bobs in my family, because there is plenty. There's a grandpa, there's a cousin, there's a brother, there's an uncle, there's a nephew, there's more that I've forgotten. They all in turn spoke to the assembled masses. But and I've been in touch with a couple of my cousins too, who were so kind to me when my mother passed away and I had to rush from India to this town of Logan, Utah. The town that frankly I would love to never go to again. But like a magnet, I'm there looking on the internet saying, how do I go from Okayama to Salt Lake City and then to Logan? And I tell you, I can get from anywhere to anywhere. You know how it is. You go to a place, you get on a tube, and you zone out and try to survive. But there's no easy logistical way to do it. I did it before from Cochin, India. I was in Auroville, Auroville. Cochin to Bombay, which is now called Mumbai, but the airport is still called Bombay. To Amsterdam, to Salt Lake City. Anywho, my dear Aunt Mickey is now neighbors at the Logan Cemetery. I guess it's called the Logan City Cemetery. It's right there in the center of town. Neighbors with my dear mother. And I received some lovely pictures from my cousins, which I really appreciate since I couldn't be there. And even the Zoom simulcast, the internet-enabled video simulcast of the funeral proceedings, happened at 1 a.m. my time. So, logistics prevented me from seeing it because, I'm... So, they sent me photos of the procedure in which the casket is lowered into the ground. And her neighbor is my mom. Now, Mickey and Laura Lee, my mom, were sisters by marriage, not by birth. And my mom's family, in all the extended ways, there was a propensity, starting from my grandparents and I'm sure beyond, for a bit of dramatic flair and just plain old drama. There's a lot of opinions and a lot of I'm choosing my words real carefully so I don't say something I regret. The point of all of this is to say that Mickey and Mom are neighbors, and they both led their life with so much kindness. You see, Mickey was born in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. That's in Canada, if you don't know. I was born in this same town, but left when I was 10 days old. But like Aunt Mickey, we spent our whole life spelling the whole dang thing, Saskatoon, just say Canada on application forms. You see, she married my Uncle Bob, aforementioned, who became, despite being educated in Canada, a career, to a point, U.S. Air Force officer. So that involved lots of moving around, and in her case, visas and, becoming USAified. I won't say American. And there's paperwork comes with that. Paperwork, lots of paperwork. And you're always writing Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. And then you add in there a few middle names like me, and there's never enough room on the form. So we all, Auntie Mickey and I, always had this in common. And every time I'd show up, hell on wheels in a Volkswagen bus with a van load of hippie kids or a different companion, instead of giving me grief about life decisions and questionable use of my talents and intellect, it would just be, oh, it's our little Davy Olsen. I was always the little one. Even when I got to be not so little, I was always her little Davy Olsen. And I would show up stinking like Volkswagen transmission oil or patchouli oil, incense, or other unique smells, especially to Logan, Utah. And she was always there to greet me with a hug. And she was little folk like me and wore glasses, as it turns out, all the Stevensons, and one by one, several of my brothers. So we always had this great little bond. And I remember as she moved around in the Air Force as a young wife and young mother, she had 6 kids, 6 cousins in that family. There's 5 in mine, 6 in another family. And now she has like 20-something grandkids and a bunch of great-grandkids she left, all her grandbabies. So, we'd always be spending time with them as they moved around Air Force bases. They're in Spokane, or as I like to say, Spokane. Sometime in Michigan. There was times in Fairchild Base in California, but there'd always be visits. And later in Guam, where there would always be visits. And I always remember her gentle nature And while so many people, because a lot of people in my family love to run their mouth, she taught me that silence was a superpower, and quiet and pause and taking a moment. Oh, look at this. I'm getting a coffee delay. Thank you. Wow. So here I am talking about spectacular women. And another one just brought me a delicious camp stove made coffee. And I remember on one of those times, all the kids, the cousins, they wanted to play, but Auntie Mickey was heading out on errands. And one of my middle names is Aaron. You also know my middle name is Thorvald. And I said, wow, Aaron, that's my middle name. She would call it, great. Instead of Aaron's, we'll call these Aarons. No one else would remember that. And I was telling this to my Uncle Bob on a great conversation the other day when he said, oh, dear bunny boy, a couple days ago, I wouldn't even been able to talk to you. I was just weeping so hard. But, I just know that my dear wife had to be called up to her heavenly opportunities for one reason or another. And I shared some of these stories. And he's like, Davey, how do you remember? Daver, how do you remember these things from way back when? A lot of my granny was a Scots lady. And so whenever my uncles talk, there's always a little bit of this mix of Canadian with a bit of Scottishisms mixed in from Granny. How do you remember these things? And it's like, I want to forget so much of these things so I can open up my brain for things I need to learn, like more chords on the ukulele and how to read and write Japanese. But seeing those pictures sent by my dear cousin, who's also named Robert, but of course, having so many Roberts in the family, we all need to have a different variation. So there's, he ended up being Rob Roy as a kid. No one calls him that now, but we'll call him Rob Roy, Esquire, because he is an attorney at law. Rob Roy sent me these pictures, and I even saw my dear little niece, Hannah, who's there living in Logan and was the one that brought the news to me. And with the casket. And there's my mom's gravestone, which I've never seen in real life. I designed it with approval from my brothers. And it's red stone from India and Art Deco font like the Agatha Christie books she loved. And on the back, her boys' names and Robert Hunter lyric, Love You More Than Words Can Tell from Grateful Dead. And my son, born on Robert Hunter's birthday, no big deal, just weird coincidences abounding. And now Mildred Mickey Stevenson, is right next to him. Now, my mom, as you may know, chose to be cremated. Speaking of rituals when we die, donated her body to science at the University of Utah Medical Center. And after about a year and a half, she was cremated. Her ashes were divided into a bunch of little glass vials and distributed amongst the brothers, and now been poured into water bodies from lakes to rivers to oceans on at least 4 continents. I've lost count. Well, this to say several places, many places. And depending on how you count them, because, sometimes it's the middle of the ocean. Is that a Anywho. But there is a token amount of ashes, allotment in a Depression-era green glass, which was one of my mom's many collections, and a very difficult one to liquidate, as it turns out. And tied up with a Japanese furoshiki cloth and put in there into the ground under that headstone in a little ceremony. And now, dear Auntie Mickey, bless her dear heart forever, is there next to her. So, I'm hoping you can hear me over the din of this weed cutter. And because I have a beautiful view of Daisen over yonder, because we're right close to the border of Tottori, my original prefecture here in Japan. And Daisen is my favorite mountain in Japan, with Myoko in Niigata being my second favorite. So, for those of you who are saying, what about Fuji? Fuji is a pile of rocks and lineups of people, many of them ill-prepared. Daisen is covered with trees, and Myoko is a beautiful conical shape. But I digress. And I also will say that in the spirit of next generations, a lot of my communication about Auntie Mickey's passing has been with her grandson named Adler, who came to visit us earlier this year. And he had studied Japanese for 4 years and shows up with flaming red hair and a sunburn to match and a hefty backpack and speaking great Japanese, and formed a lovely bond as he spent time with my son Ichiro. And he's been one of my communication channels throughout all of this, as well as my niece Hannah, the daughter of my brother James and sister-in-law Kana. So generations go on, they pass and they come on and they come on again. And then through all of this, we have another young man from the state of Utah who's the son of a great buddy from back at the community college where we earned adult high school diplomas. And now I've been sending him postcards since he was 8 years old from around the world. And now he's 18, putting his first stamps on a passport. So while I was not there in Utah for the funeral ceremonies, I was enlightening a young man from Utah on the ways of Japan, the same way that... Anyway, I say this because I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if this kid, Liam, and cousin, nephew, whatever, Adler, somehow were able to meet? Wouldn't that be fun? They could say, we both had ramen at the same place. Anyhow, digressions aside, let us open our hymnals to Sylvia Plath's Ariel, Pulitzer Prize winning, published in 1964, 2 years after her death. Published 1965, written an extraordinary burst of creativity just before her death in 1963. This is published by Faber and Faber. However, this copy that I have seems to be a knockoff from India, because just the gutters and margins just aren't proper. So it's quite lovely in its own charm, and it has a 1,299 rupee price tag on it. So do your own math. So I said at the beginning, we don't know what happens when we die, and I don't have a big opinion on this, because I think that no matter what we do, if we are kind to people, whatever edicts of religions and faiths or traditions you follow, I boil it all, I simmer it, I condense, always be kind. If you're kind to everyone, including yourself, which is my biggest challenge, it'll all come out in the wash, so to speak, says the guy who's always doing laundry. So from Sylvia Plath, this is the poem called Kindness. Kindness glides about my house. Dame Kindness, she is so nice. The blue and red jewels of her rings smoke in the windows. The mirrors are filling with smiles. What is so real as the cry of a child? A rabbit's cry may be wilder, but it has no soul. Sugar can cure everything, so kindness says. Sugar is a necessary fluid. Its crystals a little poultice, a kindness, sweetly picking up pieces. My Japanese silks, desperate butterflies may be pinned any minute, anesthetized. And here you come with a cup of tea, coffee, wreathed in steam. The blood jet is poetry. There is no stopping this. You hand me 2 children, 2 roses. I'm going to stop there with, there you go, Sylvia Plath, Ariel, poetry. This is what I was looking for at a bookshop. Anyhow, for my dear cousins and the cousin nephews, the generations and generations beyond, from my dear Uncle Bob, For Auntie Mickey's sisters, who I would have loved to meet at the memorial service, who are great Canadian prairie ladies, from what I understand, the Charmbury. And I would have loved to hear their remarks. So, part of me is saddened that I wasn't there. But what I can do is send my fondest greetings from here on the Hiruzen Plateau on the border of Okayama and Tottori, Japan, all the way to Logan and Saskatoon, Saskatoon, where I lived for 10 days, with fondness for Auntie Mickey, because I'll never call her Mildred. We'll plant a tree for her here back at our house in Okayama, so when our cousins come to visit, we can sit under with a cup of tea, coffee, or Ovaltine, and say, "Hey Mickey, you're so kind," and we'll always keep your memory alive. Very fondly. For Auntie Mickey et al.